Dragon Ball Super episodes 109 and 110 pretty much broke a portion of the internet when they came out. From crashing almost every streaming service that had it for several hours, to just the sheer magnitude of the social media response, even those who haven't enjoyed the series have had positive things to say about the two-episode special. And one of the reasons for this was because of the debut of Goku's new form, Ultra Instinct. In particular, the animation in the episode surrounding its debut has been singled out as really memorable. But I think one of the most interesting things about Ultra Instinct's debut wasn't just how good the animation was. Rather, what was interesting was that Ultra Instinct's debut was very different to the way new forms in the Dragon Ball series had normally been presented. And I think that has something to do with the unique situation Dragon Ball Super is in. One of the most significant things about Dragon Ball Super is that, like Dragon Ball GT, it was designed from the ground up to be anime first. A manga version of Super exists, and the anime often takes ideas and inspiration from it, but it's not exactly deciding the way that the story is being executed. And that does affect how the story in the anime is presented. Because, at the end of the day, anime and manga are inherently different mediums. And because of that, they have their own strengths and weaknesses over how information can be communicated to the audience. In manga, information has to be communicated primarily through still images. As a result, the individual panels in manga are manually constructed in order to convey as much clear information to the audience as possible, especially in a battle manga. Impacts need to be large, clean, and not too cluttered with too much going on at the same time. The reader needs to know exactly what's going on in the split second in which their eyes view the image. As a result, manga often tends to focus on the moment of impact, and making that especially meaningful, as opposed to looking at the movement towards it or the reaction after it. By contrast, anime doesn't have that limitation. It can still use still images to convey impact, but it also has the ability of animation to make a scene move. In particular, what that does give anime over manga is a much greater connection to time. The images have temporality to them, because they are taking up physical time of the anime's running time. In manga, time is inherently related to how long the reader spends looking at a panel, and that varies depending on the person and the situation. But in anime, the creators manually spend as much time lingering on a frame as they want to selectively stagger out what's supposed to be important. And it can spend as much time lingering on the full movement of an attack, as opposed to putting emphasis on just the moment of impact. These differences in medium all tie into how Dragon Ball presents itself. You could talk all day about this topic, but one example of this is the way that the medium shapes a story and how the story visually presents a moment in which a character has gained a boost in power or a new form and begins dominating the opposition because of it. Because Dragon Ball was designed manga first, the idea that a character had gotten stronger could only be communicated through clear visuals, and as a result, the story tended to use about 3 different clear visuals to try and sell the idea that a character has gotten stronger. Visual number 1, the character manages to land a massive attack on their opponent. Number 2, they effortlessly begin to dodge the opponent's attack. Or number 3, they purposely take a massive attack from their opponent and then show that they can easily withstand it. Pretty much any time a character gets a power-up in Dragon Ball, at least one of these ideas is used to communicate the boost in power. From Kaioken to the levels of Super Saiyan to the transformations of the villains, you can always find one of these visuals somewhere. And I think the reason as to why it never got too repetitive is because, at the end of the day, there really isn't much distinguishing, say, the different levels of Super Saiyan, other than the arbitrary increases to the character's power and speed. There really aren't many other ways to show that a character has gotten stronger. And the Dragon Ball anime adaptation was still mostly limited by these different kinds of communications because they were still adapting the manga. Most panels of the manga make it into the anime as a key frame somehow, and because they provide so much information, they really can't be skipped out on. So at the end of the day, even though anime is a different medium, the anime adaptation of Dragon Ball ended up looking visually quite similar to the manga at points. But the crucial thing about Ultra Instinct is that it sort of broke from these ideas. The form doesn't have that big, single kind of still frame moment that defines exactly what it is and what it can do. And I think there are 2 reasons as to why that's the case. The first is that Ultra Instinct is a very different kind of form to what we're used to seeing in this series. It's not just a simple multiplier to Goku's power and speed. It's instead almost a technique in which his body can move and react independently to his mind. As a result, the most important part of the form isn't that he's gotten stronger and faster, but that his very fighting style is radically changed from what it used to be. And the second reason is because it's a form that was presented anime first. Because it was designed from the ground up without a manga basis, the anime staff didn't have to adapt panels, and as such could use the benefits of animation more fully. Ultra Instinct's nature isn't communicated through still impacts, but almost entirely through the way that it's animated. As the characters exposit over how unusual Goku's movements have become, the anime lets us see this by precisely animating him in a way that's rather unusual. As an example, the bulk of the action of Ultra Instinct Goku animated by Naoki Tate. Tate seems to have an animation style all about exaggerating poses and sometimes drawing off model in order to convey more movement, and that was used to full effect in the episode. In fact, unlike other episodes of Super that featured Tate's work, the fact that Goku's movement feels kind of off-model and unnatural is used as a way to communicate the idea that within the story, his movement is unnatural, because his body is moving on its own, and as a result is animated unlike how you'd expect him to move. Or later in the episode, that sort of rotation shot done by Yuya Takahashi, where the camera is constantly moving while Goku and Jiren stand still. And as the camera passes by Jiren's back, briefly blocking Goku from view, the next moment we see him, he's suddenly moved to be right in front of Jiren. It was one of those scenes where anime's connection to time really sold the sudden, unpredictable movements Goku makes with that form. The camera spends a long time looking at Goku and Jiren being static, and then within a space of a few frames, Goku goes from being a few feet from Jiren to right up in his face. I can't even begin to imagine how you could try to do something like that in manga form. Honestly, the part of the episode that could most easily work as manga is Naoto Shishida's cut near the end, because that one is mostly made up of still frames. Although I don't know if manga could be able to capture the speed of how Goku readying his punch lasts only a few frames, if those were actual manga panels. And all of this combined to create an exhilarating experience that sold the audience on what Ultra Instinct was and what it could do without a proper line of dialogue explaining it. And that in itself is pretty amazing. Although it begs the question, if an original form like this was possible, why did it take so long? It clearly led to a real interesting visual spectacle. You'd think they really would have wanted to try something like this for a very long time. And I think the answer to that question is honestly that Akira Toriyama is kind of lazy. If he wanted to write a form like Ultra Instinct in the original manga, he could have. But the problem is then he'd have to draw it and figure out ways to communicate it through manga himself. And even just thinking about having to try and do that sounds like a really difficult experience. I'm sure it could be possible. When Toyotaro gets to it, I guess we'll see if it can work. But it requires a lot more thought and a lot more effort into the way that Goku's movements would have to be drawn. And Toriyama had a habit in the original serialization of altering things in the story to make the drawing process less time-consuming for him. As an example, that's the reason why Goku's tail kept getting removed. Toriyama found it a pain to draw, so he kept finding ways to get rid of it. But nowadays, Toriyama doesn't have to draw anything. If he has an idea, he can just write it down and get Toyotaro and Toei Animation to try and find ways to visualize it for him. And that gives him a lot more freedom over what he can do. It's similar to what happened in Resurrection F. If Toriyama was drawing the manga, I doubt he'd ever conceive of a fight between the heroes and 1,000 soldiers, because that would just be so time-consuming to draw. But now he can just write it down as an idea and basically just tell the animators to have fun. Although that begs the question as to why Super Saiyan 4, or Super Saiyan God, or Super Saiyan Blue weren't that original in terms of what they could do and how they were communicated through the anime. Perhaps it was because they thought they wanted to be more conventional to what the Dragon Ball animation normally did. Perhaps Toriyama hadn't really thought about experimenting that much until now. But the animation of Ultra Instinct was a really unique addition to the Dragon Ball franchise, and one I'm very interested to see more of.